Growing up as a Godzilla fan was always very frustrating. It seemed that although everyone knew the name, no one knew what Godzilla was. I remember adamantly defending Godzilla against family members of mine at a very young age, arguing that he is not a dinosaur, he is not a lizard, he is Godzilla. But this was an uphill climb, and it only got harder as I moved through school. Godzilla was a character Americans had known about through cultural osmosis rather than consumption of media. It seemed that many adults knew who Godzilla was due to certain Showa-era films airing on television or playing at matinee theaters, but these fragments were often very incomplete. They knew very specific Godzilla moments and tropes, but lacked the context and scope of the franchise. The number of times I heard adults mock Godzilla as being a silly series where guys in rubber suits beat up on each other in cardboard cities, while citing moments where Godzilla would dance around and fight other monsters, was too many to count. This reductionist view of the franchise frustrated me more and more as I got older. Meanwhile, I was fighting a two-front war. While the adults mocked the silliness of certain Godzilla moments from the 60s and 70s, children failed to understand the hype altogether. When I would talk about Godzilla to my peers, they would make fun of me, saying that Godzilla was lame and for babies. When I would ask people, adults and kids alike, if they had seen a Godzilla movie, they would often say yes. Yes, they had. This yes would come to haunt me as I got older. Because while it is true that they had seen a Godzilla movie, they had not seen the right Godzilla movie. Often people would recall Godzilla by saying something along the lines of, "Wasn't there one with Matthew Broderick?" or, "Yeah, I've seen the one with Ferris Bueller." The 1998 Godzilla movie seemed like a permanent stain on the franchise, one that would never be removed, and a burden to the fan base for all time.
But that's horse shit.
This movie, Godzilla 1998, is the first movie that I realized that movies can be bad.
A movie where pretty much every decision made was the wrong one.
Every fucking time.
This
it just gets worse.
This is not Godzilla.
Personally, I like the 1998 Godzilla movie. It has made a recent comeback in the fandom online and has achieved a minor redemption, as people have seemed to come to the conclusion it's a fine monster movie, it's just not a good Godzilla movie. Or, the creature's design is cool as a monster design, just not as a Godzilla design.
(1998), the year of Godzilla.
So what was it about this movie that was so influential, and what was it about this film that went so wrong? American producers had tried to get the rights to Godzilla for decades. Despite the re-edits made to some of the earlier Showa films and the popularity of the dubbed Godzilla movies, America had never made a Godzilla film of their own before. In 1983, Steve Miner approached Toho about making a film titled Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 3D. It was to be America's first attempt at a Godzilla film and looked to be generally pretty faithful to the Japanese version. Miner failed to get an American studio to back the film, as the franchise was looked at as a series of children's movies, so Miner's $30 million budget was laughed at. Due to this failure, Toho took Godzilla back and gave us Godzilla 1984. Released in the United States as The Return of Godzilla, or Godzilla 1985, with new scenes starring Raymond Burr, New World Pictures spent an estimated $3.2 million working on this film, making it a direct sequel to 1956's American re-edit Godzilla King of the Monsters. It went on to gross only $4.1 million at the box office. Seeing as though this film was a financial disappointment, the subsequent Heisei Godzilla films did not see mainstream releases in the United States for quite some time. This meant Godzilla's successful rebranding from a children's superhero into a serious and powerful icon did not reach the West. Because of that, Godzilla was still seen as a silly series about suited men knocking over cardboard cities. Toho ended their Godzilla run in 1995 with Godzilla vs. Destroya. This was supposed to mark a transitional period where Toho would officially retire the brand and let the United States take it up. Godzilla now found himself a home in the US with TriStar Pictures. For a brief period in the mid-90s, Terry Russo and Ted Elliott drafted a script and started development on a film called Godzilla vs. the Griffin. The film, set to release in 1996, was to see a radically altered version of Godzilla, now a creation from Atlantis, take on a shape-shifting alien bioweapon called the Griffin. The script was to be exciting and action-packed, delivering on massive destruction and kaiju kaiju brawls. The studio scrapped the script due to the budget being estimated from $100 to $180 million, which is ironic when you take into consideration the budget of the 1998 film anyways. Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin were approached fresh off the back of Independence Day, and they created a very different script. This one saw Godzilla as the product of French nuclear testing. His new origins show that he is the result of an iguana egg being radiated, giving birth to a new species. He awakens in the year 1998 and starts causing havoc. Eventually, he lands in New York City and seeks to make it his nest, as he is pregnant. Godzilla makes numerous appearances in the city, and massive destruction follows as the military attempts to kill him. Godzilla is portrayed less as a monster and more as an animal just looking for a home. He is scared of the military and doesn't want to cause problems. All destruction caused is accidental or unintentional, as he only shows malice in the last 20 minutes of the movie. In fact, a great deal of the destruction comes from the military themselves. A ragtag team of misfits discover a horde of Godzilla's babies in Madison Square Garden, and the building is destroyed. Godzilla is then lured to the Brooklyn Bridge, where he is killed by the military.
Godzilla's hiding, and it's up to you to find him.
Just from this brief synopsis alone, the problems in this film become apparent. While the 1983 and 1996 attempts were radically different, they were soaked in the blood of the franchise. They were made from the same bones with real love and passion behind it. Roland Emmerich viewed Godzilla as a joke and didn't want to make the film. Dean Devlin approached the project with the self-righteous and egotistical standpoint that the original films were inherently flawed and that this was a chance to set things right. The idea was to make this film serious and grounded, the 1989 Batman to the Adam West Batman series. Any Godzilla fans could have told you this already happened in the 80s and 90s. Had true fans been involved in this project, they would have known that. Roland Emmerich was sent a 75-page dossier regarding how to treat Godzilla. In it was specific instructions about the design and characterization of the kaiju. Godzilla was required to be the spawn of nuclear testing, to have 3 rows of dorsal plates, 4 fingers, 3 toes. He can't eat people, only fish, and he cannot die. Emmerich threw this out and hired Patrick Tatopoulos to create an entirely new Godzilla design, one that was scarier, faster, slimmer, and more real. It is said that Toho agreed to the design because the production team had made so much progress to the film using it that it wouldn't have been worth it to create something new. Minor tweaks could not fix this problem. They then specified that there would be 2 distinct Godzillas, the US creature and the Japanese original. Emmerich admitted in a 2022 interview to intentionally trying to sabotage this project because he hated it so much. His redesign and alterations to the character, both in origins and portrayal, were said to be an attempt to get himself fired. Emmerich's plan didn't work. He wasn't fired. He just made a bad movie. A movie so bad that it had massive repercussions at the time. TriStar and Sony knew this movie wasn't going to be received well, so they doubled down on marketing right before the film's release and made an enormous push to inflate the box office. Although the film was financially successful, with a budget of $125 million, the film grossed $379 million, it was critically panned at the time of its release. Reviewers around the world hated this movie, tearing into it for lacking any sense of terror, getting Godzilla completely wrong, and being generally boring and lazy.
According to Time magazine, Toho Studios, creators of the original Godzilla, have a compendium of iconographical do's and don'ts when it comes to the depiction of this ravager of cities. Designer Patrick Tatopoulos, who created the aliens of Independence Day, nevertheless proceeded to design a monster that violated every rule Toho laid down. I'm a bit of an iconoclast myself, but some things you just don't tamper with.
If Godzilla worked as a monster movie, I'd be happy, but it doesn't. There's not a single scary shot in the whole movie, and the monster itself lacks the majesty and mystery of the earlier movie Godzillas.
Everything about it strikes me as emblematic of what's wrong with modern pop culture. More thought went into the ad campaign and packaging of action figures than went into the movie itself.
The film was popular enough to get a sequel cartoon, although plans for a live-action trilogy were scrapped due to the poor reception. The toy line released by Trendmasters wasn't as popular as hoped, and played a part in the company going bankrupt before a line for the animated series could be released. The fandom hated this film, and went to war with many of those involved in making it, starting many battles between fans and Dean Devlin on online message boards. On a personal note, Emmerich's attitude that his film was dumb and he didn't like it, while also maintaining that it was superior to the Japanese source material, really discredits anything he's done in my eyes. It's so disrespectful and arrogant that it's beyond reason. By putting Godzilla in the hands of such a snobby yet lowbrow director, the franchise was stained forever in a way that felt like no redemption could come. As for the series, although the show was well received by children in the late 90s, it didn't have a lasting impact outside of the fan base.
You should watch Godzilla. Why?
The marketing push was successful. Godzilla was everywhere, and when the film came out, it was a financial hit. People had seen this movie. In the wake of the 1998 film, Godzilla's name was in a worse place than ever. Fans were furious at the betrayal TriStar had made to them, and general audiences were unimpressed, seeing this film as a flimsy attempt to capture the magic of Jurassic Park. The fandom dealt with this iteration of the character by naming it Gino, Godzilla in name only. Gino was the name used by the fan base for many years, all the way up until the early 2010s when fans blended this version of the character with Toho's version of the character, calling it Zilla. Zilla was a character who appeared in the film Godzilla Final Wars. After a subtle reference to the 1998 creature in GMK, Toho overtly put this design to use, pitting it up against the original Godzilla where it got massacred. This was a major catharsis for fans and is still talked about frequently to this day. It's also the biggest defining moment, stating that that was not Godzilla. Final Wars was part of Toho's Millennium series, a series of Godzilla movies which kicked off with Godzilla Millennium or Godzilla 2000 in 1999. This was inspired, in part, by the poor reception of the 1998 film, and was Toho's way of setting the record straight. But with Godzilla fatigue sweeping Japan and a lack of American distribution, this era of films didn't see much love in the West. Godzilla's legacy was ruined in the eyes of general audiences. He was a silly character from goofy films made in the 60s who had a poor Americanization in the 90s and faded into the background as a result. Adults made fun of him, and kids in the early 2000s found him to be very lame. I was picked on relentlessly for my love of Godzilla in school, to the point where I had to start keeping it a secret I was a fan. I put Godzilla away for years. It was a franchise I enjoyed only when I had sick days, but it stayed in the closet unless needed. But all of that changed one wonderful morning.
Gentlemen, you are being sent in via Halo Jump.
I still remember that day. I would wake up every morning at 7:10 ready to go to school. I would take a very quick shower, eat breakfast, and then wait for my ride to school. During this time, I would watch Minecraft videos on YouTube, but on the morning of December 10th, 2013, I opened the app and oh my god, there it was. Godzilla official teaser trailer HD. My life was literally changed forever. The teaser trailer to the 2014 Godzilla is one of the best trailers ever made. It is atmospheric and moody and horrifying. The tension builds wonderfully, and the Halo jump sequence is ominous, terrifying, and instantly iconic. The final image of Godzilla's silhouette in the smoke roaring into the sun was burned into my brain. The new powerful roar was incredible. Although I will admit, despite literally jumping up and down in my chair, nearly in tears with excitement, I was disappointed they didn't use Godzilla's classic roar. I remember telling my dad in the car about how I thought the ending of Godzilla's roar had Ghidorah's roar mixed in, and how I didn't think that was actually Godzilla's roar. I didn't think that was actually what it was going to sound like. I thought it was a very clever way to hide Ghidorah from being in the trailer while still teasing he was in the movie. I was so excited I couldn't believe it. For those of you Godzilla fans who grew up in the 2000s, you remember how rough it was. The number of fake trailers and announcements made claiming new Godzilla movies were on the way was insane. I remember being in elementary school in 2011 when the triple event happened in Japan and my friend telling me that the tsunami had caused a delay to the next Godzilla movie. I was heartbroken as I had my hopes up for the rumored Godzilla 2012. In 2009, Legendary had acquired the rights to Godzilla and confirmed the acquisition in 2010. They looked at 2012 as a potential release date and started to announce details. As a child, I did not know how to keep up with this information. I didn't even know where to look. I had limited internet access, and about the only Godzilla content I consumed that wasn't fake trailers or toy videos was Cinemassacre's Monster Madness 2009. In 2011, Gareth Edwards was announced as the director of the film. This was the first major thing Legendary got right with their adaptation. By putting Godzilla in the hands of a dedicated and true fan, the love and passion needed to revive the franchise were infused into the film. Edwards grew up with Godzilla, noting that he's a big fan of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. His film clearly takes inspiration from this era of Godzilla, as it felt like a tribute to the hero Godzilla of the late 60s, modernized and updated with a grounded approach. This movie, in many ways, represents the absolute peak of mid-Showa era Godzilla films from a technical and thematic standpoint. The intention was to have this redeem America from the 1998 disaster. They would create a Godzilla faithful to the original, one that fought other monsters, and one that was brought to life using revolutionary CGI technology. Although the film missed the 2012 release date, a concept trailer was shown at SDCC. It had been leaked online, but for those of us who didn't know where to look, it was a mystery to us. During the time between 2010 and 2013, a series of fake trailers and rumors were littered across the internet. For those who were unaware of the development of Legendary's Godzilla, these seemed like fact. A dream sequence from the 2007 film Always Sunset on 3rd Street featuring Godzilla was posted under the title Godzilla 2012 trailer, and it tricked many people, including myself, into thinking it was real. Letdown after letdown led to the morning of December 10th, 2013, when Godzilla was revealed to the world.
Man, I was scared.
Initially, I'd clicked on the video thinking it was a fan-made trailer, but as it went on, I saw how high the production value was. I then saw how many views the trailer had. Then I looked at the comments and it was revealed to be fact. The fabled film was finally happening. The following few months were marked as a massive period of Godzilla Mania for me. I consumed as much Godzilla content as I could. I tried to track down every kaiju movie I heard about. I started watching Brandon Tenold, the Sons of Serizawa podcast and all its members, and I would occasionally watch ETN videos. And most of all, I searched out any information I could on the new film. I discovered the masterpiece that was the 2012 concept trailer. I studied every frame of the teaser trailer. I found footage of the Godzilla encounter, an event from SDCC 2014. I waited for posters and trailers and clips, and I ate them up as soon as they were given to me. I read magazines and books and comics and bought toys and played the video games. The Godzilla hype was back in a big way. The trailer was so good that people at my middle school started talking about how awesome Godzilla was and how they were excited for the new movie. The public perception slowly started to shift. Godzilla 2014 carried an enormous weight on its shoulders. America had proven once before that they were not worthy of translating Japan's most iconic and influential character onto the big screen. This film couldn't just be a good enough monster flick. It had to be a great Godzilla movie. It had to prove to audiences that Godzilla could be serious and grounded and awesome. It had to right 16 years worth of wrongs. It had to redeem an entire country in the eyes of the Godzilla fanbase across the world, and had to redeem the character in the eyes of that country. The ad campaign was stellar for this film. The marketing focused heavily on Bryan Cranston's Joe Brody and played up the Halo jump to great effect. Cranston had just come off the back of Breaking Bad and was at an all-time high. The series finale marked the end of what many consider to be the greatest television show in history, and Cranston was a star now more than ever before. The mysterious advertising kept Godzilla's design a secret as a way to build up anticipation and create a need-to-know feeling for audiences. A series of incredibly well-produced TV spots and promotions were made. A Snickers ad featuring a Toho-styled Godzilla suit became a big hit. Following the film's release, an insanely impressive Fiat 500L ad kept the momentum going. The film didn't need to manufacture views the way the '98 movie did, with a bloated ad campaign and music video tie-ins. It took the opposite approach and used the less is more model to entice viewers in. The film also capitalized on the fact that it had been 10 years since the last Godzilla movie. This was the first Godzilla movie in a decade, and America's first attempt since the 90s. Godzilla was everywhere. He was on TV, in stores, toys populated shelves, classic Godzilla movies were getting Blu-ray releases. It had all built up to this.
Godzilla.
They fucking did the same thing that they did last year, where they only showed it to people that were at Comic-Con, and everyone else can just go f themselves, I guess, is basically what they were saying.
The hype was beyond real when the day came. It was Friday, May 16th, 2014. My dad told me all week that he would pick me up from school and take me straight to the theaters to see Godzilla. My brother Kyle, who doesn't even like Godzilla movies, was also excited to go. Friday, May 16th was the Greek fair at my school. As 7th graders, we all had to create Greek mythology-inspired game booths for the rest of the school to come play at. Having discovered the Marvel Comics Godzilla run just prior, I had a newfound fascination with Hercules, as he was the only Greek hero to take on Godzilla at the time. My game was inspired by the myth of Hercules versus the Hydra Lernia. I had a series of pool noodles with dragon heads attached to the ends, and I would wave them around while someone would try and cut the heads off with a sword before a timer ran out. The fair was successful and the school day ended. I collected my heads in a bag and went out to find my dad's car, only it wasn't there. I walked up and down the line of cars looking for it, and he hadn't made it yet. At one point the bag ripped and my heads were spilling out all over across the sidewalk. Then I got this call that said my dad was late due to work and that I'd have to hang out for a bit. So I sat on the side of the the road and waited. And even in the moment, I realized that this felt like a scene in a movie. The hero had fought so hard and waited so long for what they wanted, and just as they were about to get it, everything fell apart. The visual of me on the side of the sidewalk felt like it was pulled straight from a film. Eventually, my dad made it, but there wasn't enough time to make it to the Godzilla screening we were planning on seeing. We picked Kyle up and went out to dinner to decide what to do. All the screenings were sold out except for one 9 p.m. screening in 3D. As a family, we hated 3D. We had no interest in seeing anything in that format, but I was determined and I pleaded my case. My family agreed, and so we went to see Godzilla at 9 p.m. in 3D.
Hi, Godzilla. Thank you for returning my call finally.
What a jerk.
No, I'm with Brian right now.
Don't tell him.
Okay. No, it's a different Brian. Okay, well that's a bit harsh.
Finally, the moment I had been waiting for. Everything had led to this moment. It was finally time to see the King of the Monsters return. As the film started, an ominous score kicked in. Subtle radio chatter clamored on. Then, paintings of prehistoric creatures appeared on screen. Myths and legends depicting monsters, while evidence of a government cover-up were shown. The music started to build until we saw the unmistakable spines of Godzilla tear through the ocean, rising up like mountains. This should have been the most exciting moment in my life. I had never been so hyped for something before, ever. This moment had more build-up than every birthday and Christmas combined. And yet, as the spines ripped through the ocean, a horrible thought crossed my mind. This music sounds awfully familiar. This scene looks very familiar. Why do I feel like I've seen this before? What am I watching? Oh no, they did it again. Something about hearing Alexander Desplat's score for the first time while footage of the 1950s played on screen hit me like a ton of bricks. This is the exact same way Godzilla 1998 opened. They did it again. They ruined Godzilla. Much like our protagonists in the film Fanboys, I had failed to ask one simple question leading into this movie.
Hey, you guys. What if the movie sucks?
The intro sequence continued to play out and my heart continued to sink. I felt more defeated than before. I wanted to give up and leave. This was supposed to set things right, not continue where the last American attempt left off. This single realization, this moment, this was the scariest moment in the MonsterVerse. The moment everything was counting on. I had been so invested in the film's release, I didn't even question if they were going to do things right. We still didn't really know what Godzilla was going to look like or how he would act. And after listening to the SOS and Zazubar, I had a deep hatred for the 1998 film distilled in me. I could just feel them doing it wrong, I could feel them doing it again, and I could feel Zazubar's disgust. But as the intro reached its crescendo, Godzilla rose above the ocean only for a brief moment before an atomic bomb was detonated. And the spark of this bomb was like a spark of hope. That little glimmer of Godzilla was enough to reignite the fire within me and pull me straight out of my dread and into the moment. Godzilla was back. The first mention of Dr. Serizawa's name completed this course correction as I realized this film was made by someone who cares. This film was made with love. This film was made to get things right. The next 2 hours played out better than I could have ever imagined. The film did everything I wanted it to. It was a love letter to previous Godzilla movies while being new and original. It was great. The emotional roller coaster I went on was insane. I'd studied the trailers so intently and carefully, and yet I failed to realize that Sandra was destined to die. I had assumed that Joe was separated from her at the quarantine zone and that she got stuck inside. The sequence in Janjura broke my heart. Joe's emotional journey had me deeply invested in the film. Another horrifying realization hit during the Muto hatch sequence as I realized we had run out of footage. Every shot of Bryan Cranston from the trailers had now happened. There was nothing left. He would not make it out of this alive. And sure enough, down he went. The build-up revealed to Godzilla at the Hawaii airport was so well executed my heart was pounding harder than if I had just run a marathon. I remember how intensely excited and how tense my body was as the wave came crashing across that airport controller's feet and I realized, oh god, that means Godzilla has arrived. The controversial follow-up didn't have the effect it had on many others for me due to my audience. My audience was very invested in this film, and when the cutaway from Godzilla happens, they did not freak out. They had what I believe is the intended reaction to this scene. They laughed. All this tension was released from the room at once. This laughter has stuck with me every single time I've watched this sequence, and it lessens the blow of us not being able to see the fight every time. So much tension is built up to this moment, and then right as we're about to get it, it's a joke. And for me, it really works. The Halo jump had me bouncing with excitement as we were finally gonna get to see Godzilla go to war. However, I was disappointed that the fantastic speech Admiral Stenz gives in the 2013 teaser trailer was cut from the film. I practically had that speech memorized, so not seeing it in the movie was very disappointing. An iconic moment for me that I've shared on the channel before came an hour and 43 minutes into the film. Godzilla was beaten down and losing to the Mutos, creatures I absolutely loved. And I turned to my dad and whispered in his ear, "My one complaint about this movie? Godzilla does not use his atomic breath." I fully expected that because this was a more realistic take on the character, they would take the 1998 approach and refuse to give him his iconic heat ray. Not but 2 minutes later, after I said this to him, did a faint blue glow strike across Ford's face. And oh my God. I started hitting my dad's arm in excitement and blurted out very loudly, "Never mind, here it is," as if everybody in the theater knew what I was talking about. And then I started laughing both in excitement and because of how ironic it was. The movie had practically heard me and responded. The atomic breath reveal is one of my favorite moments in cinema. It is so well done, and the payoff is incredible. The shots are beautiful, and it made Godzilla's atomic breath cooler than ever. The finale was absolute perfection. The tail strike against the Muto demonstrated such power and skill, and the kiss of death. One of the best moments in the franchise, and, at the time, my favorite thing I had ever seen in theaters. At first, Godzilla started to pry the jaws open to the Muto, and I thought he was going in for the classic King Kong jawbreaker kill shot. That was exciting enough, but then his back glowed and I realized what was happening. The beam erupted down her throat until her head came melting off, and in that moment, more than any other, Gareth Edwards, Legendary Pictures, and Warner Bros. Redeemed Godzilla.
Off camera, how do you get along? Because the thing is, I mean, you're British and you're American. I mean,
yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, but no, but.
The 2014 film was incredibly popular. With a budget of $160 million, the film grossed $529 million. It was so popular, it birthed a new cinematic universe. The legacy of Godzilla had been course-corrected in the eyes of America, and Godzilla was now a mainstream and iconic character once again. The film was critically praised, and most viewers liked it. In the fan base, it can be quite split, with some people viewing it as a disappointment, while others see it as a masterpiece. There are a few camps when looking at this movie. Those that love what it is and appreciate what it set out to do, those who felt cheated and lied to by the marketing department due to the trailers and promotions promising Bryan Cranston as the film's lead and Godzilla as the antagonistic, world-ending walking apocalypse that he was in the 1954 film, and then there are those that wanted 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. They would have to wait. For me, this film is perfect. Not in that it's a flawless film, but in that I loved what it is and what it was trying to be. At the time of its release, Godzilla 2014 was my favorite entry in the franchise. I had seen all but 1 or 2 Godzilla films by the time it came out, and yet I still loved it more than all others. I returned to theaters to watch it a second time. The only other movie I can remember doing that for prior to Godzilla was 2005's King Kong. I loved it equally as much the second time, despite seeing it alone. During that second viewing, I turned to the guy next to me, who had been joking with me the whole movie, and quoted Serizawa's iconic "Let Them Fight" speech as Serizawa was saying it, completely tripping up this random viewer and making him question just how I could have known Serizawa was going to say all those words. The Godzilla presented in this film is one of my all-time favorites, and was my #1 at the time of the movie's release. Christian Pierce and Andrew Baker designed a nearly perfect Godzilla, one that was powerful, real, updated, badass, and classic all at the same time. The atomic breath was insanely cool, and I loved the way Godzilla moved and operated. I loved his morals and his fight against the Mutos.
Jazz hands Godzilla, that I want to see.
The home release of this movie was as exciting as the initial release. By this point, my phone's camera roll was filled with hundreds of screenshots of Godzilla. Every frame he was in the trailers was screenshotted and saved. I was posting on a Godzilla-inspired Instagram and had launched a Godzilla-based YouTube channel. I wonder where that would lead. I counted the days before it got released to at-home markets. On the day it came out, I called my dad and asked him to drive me to Walmart to get the movie. Back before I had a Blu-ray player, I got the DVD for the film. My dad picked up the Blu-ray. On our walk to the front counter, I remember passing stands filled with classic Godzilla Blu-rays and feeling really happy that Godzilla was back in a big way. I got home and watched the movie immediately and fell in love all over again. Although time has dulled my love for this film, it still remains one of my favorite Godzilla movies, and I have a very deep appreciation for this movie. Nothing will ever change the way I felt about the movie the first time I saw it. The MonsterVerse went on to become a $2 billion franchise and continues to this day. The 2014 film had kicked off a new wave of kaiju flicks and revived the genre to a status it has never achieved before and may never again. Although this recent boom was notably started with 2008's Cloverfield, and the kaiju hype was amplified with 2013's Pacific Rim from the same studios that revived Godzilla, it was the 2014 movie that truly exploded the new wave of kaiju. Following this film, Toho was inspired to take another crack at the character. It is also important to note that 2016's Shin Godzilla was in works before the 2014 film was released. The success of these two movies birthed the Godzilla anime trilogy, the subsequent sequels Kong Skull Island, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and the animated Godzilla Singular Point. And the MonsterVerse is still far from over, with a new installment currently titled Hourglass in development at Apple TV Plus, going back to the origins of the MonsterVerse and following up on this 2014 film directly, as well as the upcoming Netflix anime Skull Island. Godzilla's reputation has been repaired, and I no longer have to explain that he isn't a dinosaur. I don't have to clarify that he isn't the ape that climbed the Empire State Building. I don't have to hide my love for this franchise, and I don't have to hear people say, "I've seen a Godzilla movie. I think I saw the one with Ferris Bueller before." Thank you guys all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed. I really like doing these types of videos. I should do them more often. I want to give a special thank you to my top tier Patreon supporters, Acno Goji, Godzilla 154, and Saturn Dusk. While we're on that note, I would really appreciate if you checked out the Patreon and supported it down below. It goes a really long way towards making sure I can continue the channel and keep making videos like this for you guys. Through the Patreon, you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, request videos, and more. I'd be curious to know what your guys' experiences were with the 2014 film, so make sure to leave those down below. What was the scariest moment in the MonsterVerse for you? Either literally, what was the thing that scared you the most in the theater? Probably the jump scare in King of the Monsters, that's for sure mine. Or what was the thing that scared you the most psychologically, like this did for me? So I don't know. Make sure to comment below and let me know. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time for the next one. D-Man, out.